There comes a moment in every serious life when the noise finally quiets down long enough for a single question to surface. Not a question about what you have achieved. Not a question about what you own. A deeper question. Are you actually living, or are you simply moving through the motions of a life someone else designed for you? Most people never let that question fully form. They sense it approaching and immediately reach for a distraction. But the ones who let it speak, who sit with the discomfort of it, those are the people who eventually wake up to something most of the world sleeps through entirely.
Welcome to True Stoic Journal, the path to inner control.
The awakening rarely arrives with drama. It does not happen during a celebration or a milestone. It happens in the quiet hours. A long drive home. An early morning before anyone else is awake. A pause between obligations where, for just a moment, the mind stops running and starts asking. Am I living with intention, or am I simply moving from one task to the next, mistaking motion for meaning? This question is uncomfortable because it demands honesty, and honesty has a habit of exposing what distraction has spent years concealing. Many people spend decades chasing goals that were never truly their own. They inherit a definition of success from family, from culture, from the quiet pressure of comparison, and they pursue it faithfully, trusting that the achievement itself will eventually deliver peace. The promotion arrives. The house is purchased. The milestones accumulate. And still, beneath all of it, something feels unfinished. The problem is rarely effort. The problem is direction. A person can become remarkably skilled at moving forward while never having seriously examined where forward actually leads. This is why wisdom begins with a pause, and why the modern world makes that pause so difficult to find. Constant motion creates the illusion of purpose. Stillness, by contrast, feels uncomfortable because stillness removes the noise that has been quietly protecting you from your own thoughts. Socrates understood this when he said that an unexamined life is not worth living. People often hear those words as a call to endless overthinking. But the deeper meaning is simpler and far more demanding. A life lived without reflection becomes a life lived by accident. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. And entire decades pass without a single deliberate choice about direction. The examined life is different. It is shaped by intention rather than habit. It asks, again and again, whether the path being walked was actually chosen, or simply inherited. One of the most persistent illusions a person can carry is the belief that suffering comes primarily from the outside. A setback. A disappointment. A difficult conversation. The mind reaches outward because blaming circumstance feels easier than examining perception. But Epictetus offered a correction to this that has outlived empires. People are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they attach to those events. Two people can face the same hardship. One is broken by it. The other is shaped by it. The difference was never the event. The difference was the interpretation. And this single realization is where freedom quietly begins, because while you cannot control most of what happens to you, you can examine the meaning you assign to it. In that small space between event and reaction, an entire life can change direction. Many people reach midlife still carrying beliefs they never chose. Beliefs inherited from a parent's anxiety, a culture's expectations, an old wound that calcified into a worldview. A person may believe they must constantly prove their worth. Another may believe fulfillment exists only somewhere in the future. These beliefs feel like facts because they have gone unquestioned for so long. But familiarity is not the same as truth. The Stoics did not ask people to defend their oldest assumptions. They asked people to examine them, to become students of reality rather than curators of comfortable illusion. This requires humility, because it means admitting that some of what you have believed for decades may need to be reconsidered entirely. And here is the strange gift hidden inside that discomfort. The world outside does not need to change for your experience of it to transform completely. The same responsibilities remain. The same uncertainties persist. What changes is the lens. As one writer observed, true discovery is not about finding new places, but about acquiring new eyes. A person who develops new eyes begins noticing gratitude in places they once overlooked entirely. Time feels more valuable because its limits become visible. Relationships deepen because they are no longer taken for granted. This awakening rarely happens all at once. It accumulates, through a hard lesson here, an honest conversation there, a quiet morning that suddenly feels different than the 1,000 mornings before it. Each moment of awareness removes one more layer of illusion. And as that clarity grows, a person inevitably begins noticing something else, how much of their attention has been quietly stolen, every single day, without their full consent. This is where the deeper work begins. The world has built something unprecedented, a system engineered to capture human attention every waking hour. News, messages, alerts, opinions, all competing endlessly for mental space. And the strange result is that people now have access to more information than any generation in history, while feeling somehow less clear, less grounded, less present in their own lives. Attention may be the most valuable thing a person owns, because every experience of life passes through it. Relationships are built through it. Skill is developed through it. Peace of mind depends entirely on where the mind is allowed to rest. Epictetus understood this principle long before screens existed when he said that you become what you give your attention to. This is not a statement about productivity. It is a statement about identity itself. What you repeatedly look at, you eventually become. Distraction rarely feels dangerous in the moment. It arrives disguised as entertainment, as harmless curiosity, as a brief escape that costs nothing. A few minutes become an hour. An hour becomes a habit. A habit quietly becomes a way of living an entire life. The danger is never one distraction, it is the slow accumulation of thousands of them, each one pulling a person further from depth, from reflection, from the present moment they will never get back. Seneca captured this with a precision that still cuts today. It is not that life is short, he wrote, it is that so much of it is wasted. The loss rarely feels like a loss while it is happening. It only becomes visible in hindsight, when a person looks back and realizes how many years were spent worrying about things outside their control, comparing themselves to strangers, or postponing what actually mattered. There is a different kind of wealth available to the person who learns to direct their attention deliberately. The ability to remain fully present in a conversation. To sit in silence without reaching for a screen. To experience a moment as it happens rather than immediately searching for the next one. This wealth cannot be purchased. It is built, one disciplined choice at a time, the same way every meaningful change in a human life has ever been built. Understanding a truth and living by it are two entirely different things. Most people already know more than enough to improve their health, steady their emotions, and move closer to the life they want. The real obstacle has never been a lack of information. It is the gap between knowing and doing. Motivation cannot close that gap, because motivation is unreliable by nature. It rises and falls with mood, weather, and circumstance. A person can feel inspired on Monday and defeated by Thursday. The Stoics placed their trust elsewhere, in discipline, because discipline remains available even on the days when motivation disappears entirely. Discipline is often mistaken for restriction, as though it strips life of enjoyment. The Stoics saw it differently. They understood discipline as a form of self-respect, the structure that allows a person to remain aligned with their values even when emotion or temptation pulls them elsewhere. Epictetus said it plainly, no one is free who is not master of themselves. Real freedom was never about having more options. It was about governing your own reactions so thoroughly that circumstances lose their power over you. This becomes visible in the smallest moments of daily life. The person who keeps postponing the walk they promised themselves. The person who wants less stress but keeps feeding the habits that create it. In nearly every case, the deeper battle is not against the outside world, it is against the quiet, constant pull toward comfort when effort is what is actually required. Aristotle put it simply, we are what we repeatedly do, and excellence is not an act but a habit. Character is built the same way a path is worn into a forest floor, not through a single dramatic step, but through the same small choice repeated until it becomes who you are. Few things expose this more clearly than the passing of time itself. Intellectually, everyone knows life is finite. Yet most people move through their days as though there will always be another year, another chance to begin again tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius confronted this directly. You could leave this life right now, he wrote, let that determine what you do and say and think. He did not write those words to frighten anyone. He wrote them to clarify what actually matters once the illusion of unlimited time is removed. When you genuinely hold that awareness, certain things lose their grip almost immediately. The argument that felt urgent suddenly feels small. The resentment that felt justified suddenly feels like a poor use of a life that will not be repeated. Seneca said it best, it is not that we have a short life, but that we make it short, by scattering our attention across 1,000 things that, viewed from the end of a life, will have mattered very little. This is not a call toward death anxiety. It is an invitation toward a sharper kind of gratitude. An ordinary morning feels different once you understand it as a gift rather than a guarantee. A conversation with someone you love feels different once its impermanence is acknowledged rather than ignored. Every meaningful philosophy eventually returns to the same question, after all the reflection, what kind of person actually emerges from it? Wisdom that never reaches behavior is simply trivia. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that cuts through centuries of philosophical debate in a single line, stop arguing about what a good person should be, and simply be one. This is where self-knowledge becomes essential. Most people move through life on assumptions they never examined, about who they are, what they want, why they react the way they do. Aristotle called self-knowledge the beginning of all wisdom, and it remains true because a person who understands their own patterns can finally begin to change them, rather than being silently governed by them. Many of the obstacles people blame on the world are, on closer inspection, internal. Fear. Doubt. Old resentment. Impatience with the slow pace of real growth. This realization can sting because it removes the comfort of an external excuse. But it also reveals something far more useful, that the place where change is actually possible has been within reach the entire time. Emerson wrote that what lies behind us and before us are small matters compared to what lies within us, and most people carry far more capacity for courage and patience than they have ever had to discover. What makes this philosophy worth carrying is that it was never reserved for scholars or sages living apart from ordinary life. It belongs equally to anyone raising a family, building a career, recovering from a mistake, or simply trying to meet each day with a little more integrity than the day before. The opportunities to practice patience, to choose courage over comfort, to respond with wisdom instead of impulse, these appear constantly, in the most unremarkable moments of an average Tuesday. This means transformation has no expiration date. It does not matter whether you are 25 or 75, whether you are rebuilding after failure or simply searching for steadier ground. The past has shaped you, but it has not finished writing you. Every single day offers another quiet opportunity to strengthen what is good and release what no longer serves the person you are becoming. The strongest lives are rarely the loudest ones. They are built through integrity practiced when no one is watching, through gratitude returned again and again, through discipline applied patiently across years rather than days. These qualities attract very little outside attention. But they create something that cannot easily be taken from you, a kind of inner wealth that holds steady no matter what the outside world decides to do. If this gave you something to sit with today, that alone makes it worth sharing. Like this video, because it helps this kind of thinking reach the people who need to hear it most. Share it with someone you know who is quietly searching for more clarity in their own life. And if these reflections speak to something in you, subscribe to True Stoic Journal, because what we explore next builds directly on everything you just heard, and it may change how you see your own life even more than this one did. Remember this: you are not waiting for the right moment to begin living wisely. The moment has already arrived. It is this one. And the life you build from here forward will be made, quietly and entirely, from what you choose to do with it.